Secretary of State John Kerry giving an update on efforts to reach a new agreement with Russia in hopes of finally ending the civil war in Syria. Mr. Kerry indicating the parties have made progress, but says there are still several hurdles left to clear, adding that the U.S. does not want to rush things. Well, these talks coming as Russian airstrikes have been propping up the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad and changing the momentum on the battlefield in favor of the government. Let's bring in Mark Dubowitz, Executive Editor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Mark, good to see you. Would it be an absolute fool's errand to do a deal with Putin, who has allegiances not just to Assad, but Iran?
Greg, it's a real fool's errand to do a deal with Putin when you don't have leverage. And the problem with Obama and Kerry is that they have no plan B. They've talked about a plan B for years now, but they don't have one. And they've refused to actually come up with a plan. They've had advisors from Hillary Clinton to David Petraeus and others talk about ways of actually bolstering their leverage, and they've refused all of those ideas. So if you're going to do a deal with Putin and you've got no leverage, he's going to take you to the cleaners.
Has Putin provided air cover for the Iranians in their operations in this?
Well, he has, and in fact, he has very much militarized the solution. You've heard from Obama and Kerry for a number of years that there's no military option. Well, Vladimir Putin found a military option. He came back into Syria. He's provided air cover to the Revolutionary Guards and Hezbollah and the Assad regime, and he's allowed them to turn the tide. And only last year, it looked like the Assad regime was back on its heels and was really ready to fall. And with Russian air cover, they've really turned the tide of the war. They've got the leverage. They've got the negotiating prowess right now, and they're going to translate that into significant political and diplomatic achievements.
Is any deal with any of these parties destined to fail? And if so, then what's the solution?
Look, Greg, anytime you're negotiating with brutal thugs like Putin and Khamenei and Assad, you have got to have significant leverage, and you've got to have the credible threat of American power. If you take American power off the table, then they know they've got you, and they know that they can extract major concessions from you. And they also know that President Obama is not going to walk away from the table. He wouldn't walk away from the table when he negotiated with the Iranians over the nuclear deal. He's not going to do it now over Syria. He's looking for his legacy. He knows the Syria crisis is a stain on that legacy, and he wants to cut a diplomatic deal before he leaves office in January. It'll be a deeply flawed deal, just like the Iranian nuclear deal was.
Well, what struck me as dangerous about the proposed agreement between the U.S. and Russia is that we would be sharing our military and intelligence with them, right?
Very dangerous and very true, and also something that both the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence have objected to. It's deep concern that we are going to be actually cooperating with the Russians. We're going to be sharing our intelligence, and we clearly don't have the same objectives. Putin's objective is to once again reestablish Russian primacy in the Middle East, and he feels like he can be the major domo of the Middle East. And indeed he is. Everybody, the Europeans, the Israelis, the Arab countries, everybody is going to Putin today to try and protect their flank because they don't trust this administration. And that, unfortunately, is the situation that the Obama administration has put itself in. And with 5 months left, we can only hope that the damage doesn't get worse.
Well, isn't it ironic that when the Russians first intervened, they were roundly condemned by President Obama and the Obama administration? Now, by Obama proposing to do a deal with Putin, isn't he legitimizing and empowering the Russian leader?
Very much so. I mean, he's made the Russian leader indispensable. He's certainly legitimized his role in Syria and in the broader Middle East. And, you know, Obama was sort of mocking Putin a year ago, saying that the Russians were going to intervene and find themselves in a quagmire. And he would have to rescue Putin from this quagmire. Well, indeed, that hasn't worked out. And in fact, Putin, as I said, has reasserted Russian primacy in the Middle East. He's turned the tide for Assad and the Iranians, and they look like they're the winning team today. So with 5 months to go, they look like they're going to translate that military leverage into an advantageous political settlement for Assad, the Russians, and the Iranians.
Well, some are saying it looks like President Obama, yet again, got outflanked and outmaneuvered. We'll wait and see what happens. Mark Dubowitz, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.